Hello YouTube, and hello to all my new subscribers to the channel. There's been quite a few over the last couple of months, so thanks very much for dropping by, and hope you enjoy the video. In this sort of series, if you will, I just discuss sort of gaming tidbits to do with any one particular console. And today is obviously the Nintendo 64. I've done a couple others for the ZX Spectrum. I can't remember what else actually now. So this is another one in the series, and yeah, I will go through my actual console and games collection in a separate video, but this is just to sort of highlight some of the points around launch, you know, where I was in my life and stuff like that. Really, a kind of mini sort of journal. So the N64 was released in early 1997, and leading up to that I had the Super Nintendo, the SNES console. I had that, bought that quite late, got that for a Christmas gift, you know, a couple of years into the Super Nintendo's life cycle, and I was aware that the PlayStation was out already by the time the N64 launched. I think it was out a couple of years prior. So I used to go up with friends and play on his PlayStation, and you know, the world of 3D was opening up, and that was just an absolutely fantastic leap. And around that time I was working, so I had money coming in, and the N64 would then be the first console that I actually bought with my own money, expensive as it was. But around that time, it's not like now where we've got the internet and you can see launches coming out for new consoles. You've got news readily available. Then you just relied on magazines and kind of word of mouth, really, and maybe the odd Games Master, or what was it back then, Bits, and I can't remember some of the other shows on TV. So yeah, I knew that Nintendo was working on a 3D machine. I think it was called, what was it called? Codenamed the Ultra 64, I think. Project 64, Ultra 64, I think. So I knew that they were working on something, and I couldn't wait to see what they were going to do with like their IPs and seeing these things in 3D. One of my favourite games of all time at that point was Zelda, A Link to the Past. So I was really keen to see what they would do with the Zelda franchise. Obviously it'd be a couple more years on after its launch before we saw Ocarina of Time and Mario and things like that. So around the time of the N64's launch, again I was 19 years old, I was at art college studying an HND in graphic design. And on the weekend, on Saturdays, I had a Saturday job down Tesco, my local Tesco from where I lived with my mum and dad at the time, and paid pretty well. And also during the summer holidays or any sort of holidays, I would work graveyard shifts. So all the way through the night, I think I would go down there, what do you think, 8 in the evening maybe, and start, and then finish it, oh God, I can't remember now, 5, something like that. Real long hours, and I would do this every day. I was a bit like an owl. But again, you know, I was 19 years old, and I could still get up and do things during the day, and you know, you just had much more energy back then. But anyway, I was at the art college, and the art college was in the city centre. So on my lunch breaks, I would always go into town and wander about. And just prior to the launch of this thing, I remember going into Toys R Us just to have a little mooch about and see things, you know, see what was going on in there. And I noticed a big crowd around. As soon as you go in, you've got the video game section there. And I was like, what's going on over there? And I could see Nintendo 64, and my eyes just lit up, sort of ran over like an excited child, and noticed this big entourage of, you know, kids and parents all playing Mario 64 there. And I could see from a distance, obviously with my height looking over the kids, that it looked absolutely stunning, and I was just cracking nuts to get near that controller. The game looked so stunning, and I got a glimpse of the N64 controller, which is kind of like hard mounted onto this like rubbery grip thing, so no one could run off with it, I guess. So it was quite limited to how you could hold the controller. But I was just blown away by what I was seeing, and it was completely unexpected seeing this thing in there. I mean, again, this was the first console I was kind of looking forward to at launch, and I didn't know how launches would go, and I didn't know before launches they were getting consoles out into stores per se, really, in and allowing the public to check these things out. So that was new to me. It took me by surprise, and I remember going back home that evening and speaking to my then girlfriend that I'd seen this amazing thing. I've seen Nintendo's console, I'm definitely going to get it. And she's like, oh yeah, she knew I was a gamer. And yeah, so I was, and at that time we were saving money to go Reading or Glastonbury as well. So and it turns out later on she was quite peed off with me for actually putting my money towards this, but bit more of that maybe later. So anyway, the next I couldn't get to the kiosk to actually play this Mario 64. So the next day I made a beeline. Right, I thought, right, I'm going to get up early, leave art college early on a little break and just go down and check this thing out. So off I went down there, and we've all probably seen it where little Tommy Tompkins, little Jimmy, you know, this 3-year-old lad, I get in there and this little 3-year-old lad's just on his tiptoes, kind of barely reaching the controller, you know, just doing this with the thing, running Mario around, you know, just dying all the time. And I'm like, oh, get off, sort of thing. And not long afterwards, his mother comes to grab him and off he goes. And I managed to get my hands on this thing. And yeah, this was, you know, revolutionary at the time. I know it gets a lot of flack now, but I still don't really mind it. I mean, you know, you've got to hold it correctly, and yeah, I don't really have an issue. It brought so many new things to the table, and obviously I think they designed Mario with the controller sort of hand in hand with the analog stick there, and yeah, the ergonomics of the actual controller itself. But anyway, at launch, got this thing. It was, I can't remember how much it was, but it was a lot of money, and I remember thinking, blimey, but there's no way I was not going to get it. And I was first introduced then as well to the extremely expensive, you know, the costings of some of these the games there, like 50 odd quid each, and I was like, oh my god. And I couldn't afford a second controller at the time. I think this was what, £250 was it, and that didn't even have a packing game. And I bought Mario 64. I was definitely going to get Mario. I saw the other games. What was it, Pilot Wings and Shadows of the Empire, and Wave Race came out shortly afterwards. But anyway, got this thing, got it home, got it hooked up onto my TV in my bedroom at my parents' house. Or at my parents' house, I used to have a garage conversion, so, you know, 19-year-old in his own separate kind of unit was just, you know, magical, brilliant. And playing this thing, and yeah, like I said, my girlfriend wasn't too happy at the time that I bought this thing, and it meant that I didn't have as much funds to save up for Glastonbury, but we did go, or Reading, or whatever the festival it was. Went to this thing, and yeah, had Mario, which I was stuck to. I remember going to, you know, obviously he was 19 years old around that time, house parties and, you know, birthdays, and just going out all the time. So it was, you know, my partying days. But going out and then coming back to my garage conversion, going into my room, pretty cut as well, and yeah, just running around tipsy playing this and just thinking, this is just next level 3D. It was just, you know, a lot of people say this, and we won't see that kind of generational jump ever again. We'll see, you know, different higher grade fidelities and better AI and all that sort of business, but it might even be VR, I think, a true VR, which would be the next big leap like this was. But yeah, fantastic console here. I loved the curves on it, very Rubenesque, but it does look a little bit cheap, plasticky. And obviously in here you've got the expansion port, which I remember taking this thing off before we had the expansion ports. It come out a few years later and think, what the hell goes in there? And then reading magazines and you know, and the extension port there for the DD drive, and just thinking, wow, this thing's just going to be an absolute powerhouse. Now, obviously with the cartridges, you didn't have as much memory and storage space, so PlayStation had great FMV sequences, orchestral tracks, whilst Nintendo was still a little bit in the dark ages. Again, maybe in some ways Nintendo have always been pushing technology, you know, up to this point as well, with the control mechanisms and the graphics. This was obviously the most powerful console, I think, at the time. I know the Atari Jaguar come out, but that wasn't true 64-bit. But in other ways, they were starting to drop the ball, obviously with a cartridge, but based system rather than a CD. But anyway, we know that turns out. I'm not going to go through all the games, but just some of the games. I'm going to leave Mario there. Take these off. The next game I remember coming out, and this is kind of a benchmark game for me, is Turok Dinosaur Hunter. And again, with this generation in 3D, you were just waiting with bated breath to see what the next game was going to be, and like how it was going to revolutionise that particular genre or that particular IP. Turok was a new IP, and yeah, the 15 certificate, I remember the first time you see a guy running towards you, this polygonal guy, and it's like, oh my god, it looks so real. And obviously that sounds so crazy now with the fidelity of graphics nowadays, but this guy running towards you, and I remember shooting my pistol at his leg, and the leg actually bending and then limping with his leg, and I was like, oh my god, this realism's so immersive. And shooting them in the neck, and they would grab their neck and blood would spurt out and they would just sort of collapse down. Yeah, some great weapons in this thing, and it was kind of the start of the introduction of the dreaded fog for the N64, which they would kind of use to their advantage to sort of camouflage, draw distance as the game was loading in polygons and textures, albeit very low textures. But Turok was a fantastic game for me, loved that. The next one I want to talk about is Lilac Wars Star Fox, which came in this blooming great box. I remember it came out, I can't remember it came out, a couple of years in, wasn't it, or a year in, and obviously included the Rumble Pack feature here, which was again a first for any console, I believe, and I think Sony adapted this into their dual shock controller for the PlayStation after this, but it just gave another sense of immersion and showed that Nintendo was still really pushing the boundaries of innovation. And I remember going into town on the bus, bringing up my mate Neil and saying, Neil, I've got Star Fox, come up my house, it's peeing down with rain, get at my house in about an hour, I'll be back. And he just came up, we smoked some cigarettes, and yeah, played through this for hours and hours and hours. And I remember it getting quite late, and it was tea time, and Mum calling me in, sort of thing. And I'm like, Mum, just leave tea, I'll have it a bit later. Neil needed to go home, but he just didn't want to leave the place because we were just getting, it was quite a short game this, but you had the branching paths, and we just loved unlocking new levels and things like that in this. We just didn't want to put this thing down. It was just breathtaking. Now the big thing about the N64 as well was the 4 control ports it had on the front of the console. And as I've said, I had a garage conversion, 19 years old, party time with all the boys in the garage, having a few drinks, smoking some cigarettes, and playing 4-player multiplayer games. And these bad boys, GoldenEye, Mario Kart 64. There was Diddy Kong 64 as well, which I did kind of prefer to Mario Kart 64. Sorry. I just like the full 3D aspect of the karts, and I really enjoyed the single player in this. Rare did a cracking job with Diddy Kong, but these are the main two that we sort of played 4-player just religiously every night. The chap's coming up, a couple of drinkies, smoke some cigarettes, and yeah, just a while of a time with these two games on. I can't remember then if I had my mum and dad's Ferguson 21-inch. It was around that time because I was working at Tesco's. I bought my first Hitachi widescreen CRT TV down there. And what we would do, don't know if anyone else done anything like this, but we created this, because in the 4-player games, especially GoldenEye, you would always look into your other player's segment to see where they were running, and because we played it so much, you would get used to the maps, the multiplayer maps, and you could see where they were in relation to you, and you can use that to your advantage and obviously disadvantage, like, oh my god, they're onto me sort of thing. So what we come up with is this contraption. It was basically two pieces of card like that we somehow stuck to the front of a TV screen, and we stuck it down on the top, and it would almost give you like your own little window into each square. Sounds ridiculous, but we did it, and it worked quite well. So we couldn't see into anyone else's window unless you went like that, but then you're at a disadvantage because you were taking your eye off your particular screen. Don't know if anyone else did that. Did you? Let me know in the comments below. I don't think anyone else would be so daft as to do that, but anyway, Mario Kart 64, great fun, and my girlfriend at the time actually did really enjoy playing this one. So it's those. A couple of years later into the life cycle of the N64, went away to tour, and I've mentioned this before in a couple of other vids, and it was for my degree, to get my degree in graphic design. What game should come out whilst I should be, working hard, doing all the coursework, getting stuff in on time, doing my dissertation? Oh, just a little game called Zelda 64, Ocarina of Time. Damn it. And this thing cost a lot of money. 50 odd quid, was it, or £55? Did it come out around the Christmas time? Oh man, this came out and I was spending so much time on this in the evenings. Coming home from college, university, back to the halls of residence then, and working on it, playing on this when I should have been doing work, and then putting this down eventually, and eating some tea, and then doing a little bit of coursework in the evenings. But man, yeah, this game was fantastic. Never played anything like it before, and again, like I said earlier, A Link to the Past was my favourite game of all time. I think, to me, because it was the first Zelda I really got into, the first adventure, it still pips this. But man, this game is one of the best games ever. It's fantastic. And I should say actually about the game's prices, I remember Turok was something like 60 odd pounds, wasn't it, or something like that. And again, going back to the launch of the N64, I remember they quickly dropped the price of it, didn't they? What was it, it felt, I remember it was almost like weeks, but it might have been a month or so afterwards. They dropped it by, was it 50 or 100 pounds? And I remember being really peeved and telling my dad about this, 19-year-old boy, but he was saying, why don't you write to the company? So I did. Remember that, actually being able to write to companies back then, just unheard of nowadays. Send them an email, it'll get lost forever. So I wrote out this letter saying, I've been a huge Nintendo loyal fan for many years. I had your Super Nintendo, laid it on a little bit thick. I bought this at day one, so I was really excited to buy your product, and I was quite disheartened and taken back that you had reduced the price so quickly when I spent so much money. I felt because I was loyal, just laid it on really thick, and never thought anything of it. But a couple of weeks later, a parcel come through the door with a letter, and it was from Nintendo saying, we're really sorry, please accept this as a token of our appreciation. And it was a second black Nintendo 64 controller free of charge, which I thought was a really nice gesture. But it gets better, because about a few days after that, I get another letter saying exactly the same thing, and another black N64 control pad. So yeah, 2 free controllers. So it worked out absolutely spanking for me. Brilliant administrative error on Nintendo's part that worked in my favour. So yeah, I come back from university in 99, 2000, and had the N64 for a little bit, saw it for a few days, and then I did eventually end up selling this to get the Sega Dreamcast, which I absolutely loved also. But more of that in another video. I just want to end this video, if you're still there, if you're still keeping with me, just want to end this video with a game I've been playing recently, and it's Conker's Bad Fur Day, which does command, somewhat of a price. I'm not sure what the price is now, but even when I got this for a decent price, probably 6 years ago now, and I've only just got around to playing it. It was in a video I did, which is on YouTube on my channel, entitled 5 Games That I Started and Need to Finish, and I've finished this one. And I've got to say, as my quick review, I found it bloody frustrating, this game. And maybe that's the thing with going back to, I do find this particular generation out of all of them, the kind of hardest to go back to, this and the PlayStation 1. Depends on the game, granted, and how the developers encoded the controls, how they got a grasp on the 3D camera and stuff like that. But this one, my God, it was frustrating, and it just felt like I was going from one frustrating scenario to the next. The game didn't really explain much to you. You were like, where the hell am I going? And maybe, again, that's a product of its time. Your hand wasn't really held too much back then, whereas now you got all the arrows and the markers in games to show you where the next mission point is, etc. But yeah, the camera was a bit annoying, the jumping was a bit annoying, and I thought, obviously I'm an older, wiser man now, I thought the humour was a little bit off the mark, but yeah, bit of a disappointing game. I'm glad I beat it though. So there you go, peeps. Like I said at the start of the vid, I'm planning on doing an N64 collection video, games collection video, at some point in the foreseeable future. Again, I've still got that room tour video coming up that I do plan on doing at some point soon. Again, it's brightening up in the evening, so I've got better daylight like now to film these videos. And all that's left to say, as usual, is everyone, thanks for watching. Everyone take care. I'll see you again soon.